Hi, my name is Camille, and this is week 37, day 4, reading from First Chronicles 7 to 8 from the Names of God version. In the genealogies of First Chronicles 7 to 8, we glimpse the faithful few who carried God's promise through generations. As we walk the Lenten road, may we find our place in the story, linking arms with those who preceded us in faith. What names in our own lives need redemption, relationships, habits, callings? May we surrender these to the God of generations, trusting He'll weave them into His tale of love. First Chronicles 7. Issachar's four sons were Tola, Pua, Jashub, and Shimron. Tola's sons were Ozir, Rephaiah, Jeriel, Shammai, Ibsam, and Shemuel. These men were heads of the families of Tola. They were soldiers grouped according to their ancestry. In David's day, there were 22,600 of them. The five descendants of Uzi were Izrahiah and Izrahiah's sons, Michael, Obadiah, Joel, and Ishiah. All of them were heads of families. They had many wives and children, so in addition to these men, grouped according to their ancestry and families, there were 36,000 soldiers. Their relatives, that is, all of Issachar's families, were fighting men. A total of 87,000 of them were recorded in the genealogy. Benjamin had three sons, Bela, Besher, and Jediel. Bela's five sons were Esbon, Uzi, Uziel, Jeremoth, and Eri. They were heads of families and fighting men. In the genealogy, 22,034 of them were recorded. Besher's sons were Zemira, Joash, Eliezer, Elionai, Omri, Jeremoth, Abijah, Anathoth, and Alemeth. These were all of Besher's sons. In the genealogy, 22,200 of them were recorded according to their ancestry, the heads of their families and fighting men. Jediel's sons were Bian. Bian's sons were Jehush, Benjamin, Ehud, Shenaniah, Zethan, Tarshish, and Ahishahar. All of these men were Jediel's descendants. They headed families that produced 17,200 fighting men who could go to war. The Shuppites and Huppites were Eri's descendants. The Hushites were descendants of someone else. Naphtali's sons were Jaziel, Guni, Jazer, and Shalom. They were Behaz's grandsons. Manasseh's sons were Azriel and Masher. Their mother was Manasseh's Aramean concubine. Masher was the first to settle Gilead. He married a wife from the Huppites and Shuppites. His wife's name was Makkah. The name of his second son was Zelophehad. Zelophehad had only daughters. Makkah, Masher's wife, had a son and she named him Peresh. His brother's names was Sheresh, whose sons were Ulam and Rakim. Ulam's son was Bedan. These were the people of Gilead, descendants of Masher, son of Manasseh. Bedam's sister Hamoleshet gave birth to Ishhad, Abizer, and Malal. Shemada's son were Ahian, Shechem, Likhi, and Anayam. Ephraim's son was Shetelah. Shetela's son was Bered. Bered's son was Tahath. Tahath's son was Elead. Eleadah's son was Tahath. Tahath's son was Zabad. Zabad's son was Shothelah. Ephraim's sons, Ezer and Elead, were killed by the men of Gath when they came to take their livestock. Their father Ephraim mourned a long time, even though his brothers tried to comfort him. Then he slept with his wife, and she became pregnant. She gave birth to a son, and Ephraim named him Beriah, which means tragedy, because tragedy had come to his home. Beriah's daughter was Shira, who built Upper and Lower Beth Horon and Uzen Sherah. Beriah's son was Repha. Repha's son was Resheph. Reshev's son was Telah. Telah's son was Tahan. Tahan's son was Ladan. Ladan's son was Ammihud. Ammihud's son was Elishama. Elishama's son was Nun. Nun's son was Joshua. The land and homes of Ephraim's descendants were in Bethel and its villages, Naram to the east, Gezer with its villages to the west, Shechem and its villages, and as far as Gaza and its villages. Next to Manasseh were Beth Shean and its villages, Tanakh and its villages, Megiddo and its villages, and Dor and its villages. The descendants of Joseph, son of Israel, live in these cities. Asher's sons were Immer, Ishva, Ishvi, and Beriah. Their sister was Sarah. Beriah's sons were Heber and Malshiel, who first settled Berzith. Heber was the father of Japhlet, Shomer, Hotham, and their sister Shua. Japhlet's sons were Pasash, Bimhal, and Ashvath. These were Japhlet's sons. The sons of his brother Shomer were Raga, Jehuba, and Aram. His brother Helem's sons were Zophah, Imnah, Shelesh, and Amal. Zophah's sons were Sua, Harnefer, Shual, Beri, Immer. Bezer had Shama, Shilsha, Ithran, and Bera. Jether's sons were Jephune, Pispa, and Ara. Ula's sons were Ara, Haniel, and Ruziah. All of these men were Asher's descendants, head of their families, outstanding men, soldiers, and distinguished leaders. Their military roster had 26,000 recorded in it. 1 Chronicles 8. Benjamin was the father of Bela, his firstborn, Ashbel, his second son, Ahara, his third son, Noah, his fourth son, and Rapha, his fifth son. Bela's sons were Adar, Gera, Abihud, Abishua, Naham, Ahoa, Gera, Shephufan, and Huram. These were Ehud's sons, who were heads of the families living in Geba and who were taken away as captives to Manahath, Naham, Ahijah, and Gera. Gera led the rest of them away as captives. He was the father of Uzzah and Ahihud. Shaharaim divorced his wives Hushim and Bara, but later, in Moab, he and his wife Hodesh had the following sons: Jobab, Zibiah, Mesha, Malcolm, Chuz, Sashia, and Mirma. All of Shaharaim's sons became heads of families. He and Hushim were the parents of Abitub and Elpal. Elpal's sons were Eber, Misham, and Shemed, who built Ono, Lod, and Lod's villages. Bera and Shema were the heads of the families who lived in Ahijalan. They forced out the people living in Gath. Their brothers were Shashak and Jeremoth. Bera's sons were Zebediah, Arad, Eder, Michael, Ishpa, and Joha. Elpal's sons were Zebediah, Meshullam, Iskai, Heber, Ishmerai, Iziliah, and Jobab. Shemiah's sons were Jakim, Zershi, Sabdi, Eleniah, Zelithai, Eliel, Adiah, Beraha, and Shimrath. Shashak's sons were Ishpan, Eber, Elil, Abdon, Zishi, Anan, Ananiah, Elam, Hathan, Thijah, Ifdahiah, and Penuel. Jeroham's sons were Shamshiriah, Shehariah, Athaliah, Jerishia, Elijah, and Zishuri. These were the heads of families listed in their ancestries. They were the heads of families. They lived in Jerusalem. Jael, who first settled Gibeon, lived in Gibeon, and his wife's name was Makkah. His first son was Abdon, then Zur, Kish, Baal, Nadab, Gedor, Ahio, Zesher, and Mithloth, who was the father of Shemiah. They lived next to their relatives in Jerusalem. Ner was the father of Kish. Kish was the father of Saul. Saul was the father of Jonathan, Malchishua, Abinab, and Eshbal. Jonathan's son was Meribal, and Meribal was the father of Micah. Micah's son was Pithon, Melech, Tariah, and Ahaz. Ahaz was the father of Jehoiada. Jehoiada was the father of Alemeth, Azmapheth, and Zimri. Zimri was the father of Mosa. Mosa was the father of Benaiah. Benaiah's son was Rapha. Rapha's son was Elasa. Elasa's son was Azel. Azel had 6 sons. Their names were Azikram, Bashiru, Ishmael, Sheariah, Obadiah, and Hanan. All of these men were Azel's sons. His brother Eshek's sons were Ulam the firstborn, Jush the second son, and Elipheleth the third son. Ulam's sons were soldiers, skilled archers. They had many sons and grandsons, 150 in all. All these men were Benjamin's descendants.